Google and Wikipedia and, or figuring out what other organizations were out there. And I realized that there weren't that many organizations, there weren't any organizations out there. And that, a lot of people didn't even know what coding was. And that there was a real opportunity to make a difference. And I thought about, I'm like, at my core, I'm like a marketer. Like I always I just think like a marketing person. And so I was like, Girls Who Code, that's a really cool name. And I went on GoDaddy.com and like bought it for $1.99. Like it was just, and I always said, when you have ideas, just go buy the URL, right? You should do that all the time. It's like not that expensive to do that. But I just spent a year and a half just piecing together these different components of like, what's the right name and what's the right intervention, and what other nonprofits are doing this, and what's wrong with the way that they're teaching computer science to girls right now, like what's turning them off about it, like what's happening with culture in terms like what are the media images that are out there right now for girls, and so when I started Girls Who Code for our first program, it was just like a pilot. I was like, let me get 20 girls together, hand pick them, ask my friend to borrow his conference room, buy everybody pizza, because that's super cheap, and just try. And I did, and it was that led to a movement, but I didn't intend to build, a STEM movement. I intended to just experiment with my idea. We have questions.
I just wanted to ask, the girls that joined your program originally, were they like educated in programming?
So most of them were under the poverty line. Most of them were, and they're all from Manhattan, we're all from the 5 boroughs, right? And so most of them were like, didn't have computers or had disparate like internet and like at home and at school. So these were girls like everybody was like, oh, there's no way they're gonna learn. And so I picked almost like the hardest to reach girls first. And that was the thing. I was like, not only they were like learning how to code and they loved it. I remember the first year I actually paid everybody like $50 or something. Because I was like, no way are they gonna stay for 7 weeks learning how to code every day. They're gonna wanna go to the pool, right? I thought I had to like bribe them, you know what I mean? To like learn how to code. And like, I didn't, you know what I mean? Like I didn't need to, we never did that ever again because none of them dropped out. So a lot of it was just like experimenting with different theories that you had, right? About what or why. But that's probably what I'm the proudest of. And I think the thing that from the first program, what was so amazing was that what the girls wanted to build. So I had this girl, Leslie, who was like from Queens, and this was like right after Sandy. And like so many businesses in Queens were displaced, right? Around the entire city. And a lot of them didn't have websites. So like when the store went down, they had no other way of communicating with their customers. And so she, as part of her project, was like building website for like, you know what I mean? It was just, I was like, wow, like this is amazing. Like this is like, how do we replicate this? And so that was when like the light bulb went off in my head, which was like, maybe this isn't about me getting to Washington and like making a difference. Maybe this is about like me building an army of like girl coders who are gonna like solve like everything, climate change, find a cure to cancer, you know what I mean? They do it all. And that's really what's happened over the past couple of years, I feel like. It's on its way to happen.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
100%. A lot of the people here are starting their own initiatives, whether it's to give back or their own companies, businesses. So what would be, aside from buying a domain right away, what would be your biggest piece of advice as for a teenager who wants to start their own?
I think just try it. So like, I think by the time, I think what inspired me, why I was able to run for office and I think to start Girls Who Code is by the time I was 33 or 35, I had started so many organizations or things that wasn't scary to me, right? I was always doing that when I was in high school, right? I was starting a club or starting an organization or doing this or doing that. And so I was entrepreneurial, like always. And so I think that that is like, because most of the time this stuff is not gonna work out. Like most of the time you're gonna fail. And I always say it's like, in some ways, like I talk a lot about this right now, about bravery, like you gotta exercise it as a muscle. So you like, as young as you possibly can, you have to get comfortable with getting rejected. Like I still to this day save my rejection notes like in a suitcase. Like if you go to my house, like you'll find different rejection letters posted on like my refrigerator. Because it just reminds me, right? Like, oh, okay, like I can do this. And so I think if you get in the practice of starting things, you'll get in the practice of failing. And that will help you, like later in your life, keep trying. I mean, some of our biggest and baddest entrepreneurs, like Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg, they had failed a ton before that, like, lightning magical idea happen to them. And so I think you got to get in the practice of starting things.
Mm-hmm. And one of the most important parts of a successful business or organization kind of would be your team.
Yeah.
People you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
How did you go about picking, people for your team as the organization grew?
Yeah.
What was kind of your biggest strategy for choosing people?
So I always hire people who are smarter than me. And I mean, I worked for someone who's not to be named, but he had a really hard time hiring people that were smarter than him. And so, because of hubris, right? Like some people get intimidated if you're working with somebody who just knows something more than you do on a particular subject. And like, I look for that. And so I think that is really, really important. I think I'm also just, I'm like super passionate. Like I'm like a hustler. I eat, live, sleep, breathe, thinking about every day how to get more girls to learn how to code. I'm obsessive in some ways, right? Probably. And I look for people like that who like have deep amount of passion and conviction. And I think that is like really, 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 really important. Because you can't drive yourself so hard and it not feel like work if you don't really love the thing that you're doing. Mm-hmm. And for so long, when I was your age, I was like always chasing the best things, right? So like, again, where I grew up, nobody went to Harvard or Yale. Like nobody went to top Ivy League schools. Like people, like everybody's really super scrappy. And so to me, I always thought, well, if I go to these best schools and I work at these companies, then I will be credentialed in the way to like be taken seriously. And like, none of that happened. Like no one cares. Like it didn't happen. Because what was the most important thing was for me to get experiences that I could learn from, and not to be, not to check off boxes of like fancy places that I went to school at. Mm-hmm. And that took me probably till like my early 30s to really understand that. And I think people who understand that earlier are probably in some ways more successful, because they're not chasing the name brand, right? They're chasing the experience, and they're learning from that.
Mm-hmm. Just out of curiosity, Girls Who Code grew very quickly, and it's become this huge organization that almost everybody has heard of. So I'm just curious, what was kind of the turning point, the biggest lesson that you've learned when the Girls Who Code grew so quickly, and how did you manage? What is the essential thing that you learned when you had to manage this large organization?
So, I mean, I had to learn on the job. Like, I was never a nonprofit leader. I'd not launched a nonprofit before. I'd never managed a team that was this big. I was good at raising money, and I was good at convincing you to do something like that. Those were like my big, my two major skill sets. But I had to really like put my head down and learn how to be a nonprofit leader and learn how to, I was never good. I think again, coming from immigrant parents, like my father never said to me, "Good job." Like when I lost my elections, he'd send me an email being like, "Here are the 10 things that you should have done differently." Like it was hard. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? And so I was never good at saying to somebody, "Well, great job." Like, because I was like, "Well, you just did your job. Like, why don't because that's how I was raised. And like, I had to learn that mattered to people. For some people, that they didn't grow up the same way I did, right? And so I never needed affirmation. You know what I mean? No one tells me good job. It's fine. Like I don't need it. In fact, I do better, as my father reminds me, of not having affirmation, because I'm still like I'm constantly probably. I mean, this is very Freudian, and I should, and that you guys are like my therapist or anything, but like, like right, that creates drive for me, right? But for some people, they need affirmation, and so I had to learn when I was like, at Girls Who Code to do that for people, and so. There's just a lot of mistakes I made, like a ton of mistakes I made in the past couple of years, and just like learning, and being forgiving myself and admitting when I'm wrong. Like I'm intense, as you probably can see, like, and and I have to realize that not everybody is like me, and that's okay. Like I do, and yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, just being passionate, I guess, about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the expert in a specific field of coding.
Yeah. And like that. Think about that, right? It's like I speak probably in front of some weeks 10,000 people, and I should be nervous that someone's gonna ask me some hard question about coding, and I'll be like, what? I start every speech with being like, full disclosure, I'm not a coder, right? So it's like, and that for a type A ambitious woman, that was hard, right? Because we never like to admit that we don't know things. And so I think that yeah.
And what were some obstacles that you had to go through on the side of being a woman, whether it's in politics or in Girls to Code, starting your own business, and how when you saw them, how did you overcome them?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, I think that I think we still live in a society that doesn't love strong women, you know, and I feel like I saw this in the last presidential election, very painfully. Hillary's been a mentor of mine since I was 18. I have been working for 2 decades for that moment, you know, and, spent the last few months for a campaign on a plane, you know, strapping my 2-year-old to my back, like running from city to city, college campus to campus, like trying to get people to, stop us from being in the place that we're at right now. So it was hard. And I think that as I took a step back, I was like, wow, like we have so much sexism to deal with. Because I still think that gender played a huge role in the outcome, and so I think we need to work on that, and not just with men, but amongst women too. I think that a lot of women still see leadership as very male. You know, I mean, how many times you're not yet for you, but I still hear women say, "Oh, I'm nervous to have a female boss." You know, and so a lot of our own kind of patriarchy plays out still, right? Amongst us as women, and I feel that to me is the thing that I'm excited about thinking about. How do you undo that? Like, what's that about? And how do we? Because if we can build a sisterhood amongst each other and really recognize that, like, you know, these moments where you can have the most powerful person on the earth be a woman, that's a game changer from a role model perspective, right? And she's the most qualified person, like, you know, hello, right? Yeah. So that's hard, I'm hopeful. Like, I just think we just have to fight harder. Like, I was just kind of like, oh, I thought that this was going to be done, and it's not done yet. And so, like, I woke up the day after election crying, being like, I'm never going to have a female president in my lifetime. And then I'm like, you know, a week later, I'm like, yes, we will, but I'm just going to have to fight for it every single day.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. And, what would be, what would like a day in your life running Girls to Code?
Oh my gosh.
What would it look like?
What does my day look like? Yeah. So I have a 2-year-old son and a dog who is like my child. So I'm probably the first one up in my house. So I'm normally running to go walk the dog before the baby gets up because my husband is a sleeper. So he does nighttime, I do mornings. And then I realize that when you do not anytime soon, but when you eventually become parents, all of you, you realize that you get one thing that's about you, that you get to have. And so I pick, my thing was like, I have to get to the gym. If I get to the gym 4 or 5 times a week and I go for a run, I feel much better as like a human being. And so like, yeah, so I like have to know, I just know that like between 6:30 and 7:30, 7:30, 8:30 is gonna like be my time. So the mornings are kind of rushed because I'm trying to, again, walk the dog, feed the baby, get to the gym, dump him in my husband's bed, and like run out the door. And then all to probably get back for like a 9 a.m. conference call. And, you know, I think like my days are a mixture between, you know, having team meetings, you know, making some important decisions on things, probably speaking at 1 or 2 things a day, you know, definitely 4 to 5 things a week. I'm normally on a plane once or twice a week, going to another city and talking. So like Friday, I'm going to Miami. I know it sounds cool, but it's not. And yeah, that's and then all to hopefully kind of get back. I like to always try to get home by like 6:30 to put my son to bed, you know, and spend some time with him, and then to get back online and go back to sleep. Sleep is important. You guys don't sleep anymore, do you? That's bad. That's really bad. I really believe I need to get 8 hours, and I think we all need to get 8 hours. And so like that probably means I get to watch less Netflix than I like. But like something has to give in your life, and so yeah.
Do you actually get 8 hours of sleep?
Yes, I do.
Oh, wow.
I don't function if I don't. Because my job is about really being on, and like I just don't believe in this whole like 5 hours, 6 hours of sleep, and you can actually be like creative and innovative and thoughtful and like on and present. So sleep is big, but that means other things have to go.
And if you have any time, extra time left over, do you have any hobbies that you like to do in your free time?
So I like to run. I'm a voracious reader, so I always have a book somewhere on, like, you know, every moment I get, I'm reading something, and it's, you know, fiction and nonfiction. So I love it. I've always been like that since I was like a kid. Like I love to read. Like that's what I want to do when I retire, is just read all the time. Yeah. And then, you know, I always commit every year to trying to have more fun, because I'm probably more serious than like I should be. But and my husband's not serious at all. But and then, you know, spending time with my family, like my son and my dog.
And your husband.
And my husband. I always forget about him.
I think we had a question from.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, what's your favorite book?
My favorite book? I couldn't even tell you one. You know, I love, obviously, like my Long Walk to Freedom, you know, Nelson Mandela, like books that are really historical nonfiction. You know, I love to read. I love to see how people who I admire, like, made decisions and the things that they did and how they got to where they got to. I like, right now I'm reading Grit by Angela Duckworth, so I like, you know, Angela Duckworth, you know, Anne Grant, the originals, like, you know, Malcolm Gladwell, like, how do you put together these kind of theories of change for leadership, and like, so I'm really into that. I'm working on my book on bravery, so I'm reading a lot right now about perfection and like, where does that come from? Is it biological? Are boys and girls raised differently? Like, you know, what are examples of like really brave women? Like, I read too much, you know, New York Times, Politico, The New Yorker, Atlantic, right? I read too much of that. I try to like turn off because it's overwhelming sometimes. Yeah.
It's very interesting that you're writing a book.
Yeah. So it's so it's my third book actually. So my first book I wrote as like a journal after I lost, and it was amazing. I knew nothing about writing a book. And so I like learned about that. And then my second book, where we have a children's book coming out on Girls Who Code, and then this is my third, like, I feel like this is like my third like grown up big girl book, right? Like I'm like, I know now, you know what I mean? I know kind of what I want to say. I feel like I'm much more confident, right, about like my voice and like being an author. And yeah, and it's like, it's fun because it's like I get to read and research and think and write.
It's very interesting.
I wanted to ask, being that you're so like passionate about presidency, like, would you consider running for president yourself?
Oh my God, running for president? I mean, I think that, like, so I ran for office twice and I lost twice. So like, it's funny, like, so it's like, I sometimes think like, gosh, I mean, like, Girls Who Code, like every time like I try to do politics, it pushes me back to Girls Who Code, and like that's like my, you know, we say in Hinduism, like what your dharma is, like that's what I'm supposed to be doing in my life. But then I also think that sometimes that like things are hard and you gotta like keep, and I will be, like someone said this to me the other day, like he said, you know, you're special, Reshma, because things will come easy to you. And that's just like the truth of my life, right? Like everything is always so hard, you know, and that's gonna be this. And so, you know, if I'm ever gonna get elected, it's gonna be a freaking hard road, you know, and I have to like really, really, really figure out whether that's what I want, and that's how I think I can make a change. And I think the thing I struggle with is that like I have a big voice, you know, on the outside of the system, and a bigger voice than probably, you know, a lot of people in Congress or in the Senate, and like I'd have to give that up, right, to go run for office, and it'd have to be worth it for me, because it's not, again, it's not what it used to be when I was 18. And again, I want to be congressman, just because that's what I think I should do. It should be like, for me, it's like, now I want to be in Congress because I think that like on these issues I can make a bigger difference on that. And so I'm definitely in meditation about that a lot recently, because I also can't keep screaming at the TV. And I can't, go to a protest every day, right? I need to figure out what all of our roles are, right? In like being a part of or making up the government that we think we want. And so that means I have to look at myself and make sacrifices and choices. And so I don't know.
Oh, so how do you get something up and running? Like, I have many ideas that I want to make them into reality, but I'm always like scared, or I don't know what to do like on my own to make them into an actual like, startup, for example.
So for me, I'm not a quitter. So if I start something, I'm gonna see it through. That doesn't mean it's gonna work out. So I would tell you just to start it. But you gotta pick and read, like this book Grit's been really interesting about that. I think you have to figure out that you have to though do process of elimination in terms of the 1 or 2 ideas you're really passionate about. Because I think we can get lost in like the 10 things that I think I wanna do. Like what are the 1 or 2 things that you like think about over and over again? And then take those initial steps to putting it into the world. And don't talk yourself out of it. Because the worst thing that happens is it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
But then you have a great story.
Yep.
And how do you recommend getting funding or searching for kind of the money you need to start up business?
So I think sometimes you don't need a lot of money. You can bootstrap it, and that's why I did what Girls Who Could. Right, I borrowed a friend's conference room. Bought pizza. Like talked to people I knew to like give free food, I mean, normally it's about space, food, and talent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like a lot of people will, if they're passionate about it, want to work on an idea. Like I spend a lot of time volunteering on things and working for free. And so I think that you can like, those things are not impediments. Like funding should never be an impediment to like trying something out, because it's not.
What do you think is your spirit animal?
I know someone asked me that. I don't know. What do you think my spirit animal is?
I think a mix between a tiger and a scorpion, but maybe not a tiger. It's like 75 scorpion, 25
Okay,
tiger.
I'm gonna look this up when I go home. Okay, I'm gonna look it up. I'm a Scorpio. I'm born in November.
Oh.
Yes, I'm totally a Scorpio.
I see that.
Yeah. I was very upset when they said they changed the astrology signs or something. I was like, no. Did you have a question?
Yeah, but I forgot it.
The Scorpio.
The Scorpio thing.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
about
just a
you know,
little
the
bit.
spirit animal you are.
So.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I was gonna ask, how did you get the word out about Girls Who Could when you first started? Like, how did you get the 20 girls to like agree to do it, or how did you let them know it was an option for them?
Yeah, so like I met this guy who had a spreadsheet of all the principals in New York City's email addresses, and I blasted it to them. That's the thing, I feel like it's like there's so many resources in our own like world and our own network. We just have to ask. And I think sometimes because you're afraid to fail, you don't want to tell people you're actually doing something, because what if you decide not to do it anymore, right? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so then the problem is like, you're putting yourself in a catch-22, because if you don't tell people, then they can't help you do the things that will then make you feel like you're ready enough to go try this idea that you're afraid of failing. So if you keep it to yourself, then all you are is in your own head, you'll talk yourself out of doing it, and you won't get the support you need.
Once you guys like completed your first, I guess, big project as Girls Who Code, how did you like present that, and like to whom did you present?
Yeah, it's great. So I think for me that I did 2 things. So I had to do this TEDx talk, and so that talk then forced me to figure out, well, what was my topic? There were 2 things I was passionate about, right? And I decided on Girls Who Code, and so I put that into a PowerPoint presentation, which forced me then to like sometimes speeches actually help you then tell the narrative of the story or the thing you're trying to do. So that was helpful. And then the second thing was that I met somebody at a leadership conference who was like, my friend Alex Ablin, now he's my friend, but he ran community affairs at Google, and he, was this young guy who just had like pockets of, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. He was like, yeah, I think I can find send you some money, write me a grant. And again, writing a grant forced me to kind of put the idea on a piece of paper. So I think that those two, like if you're gonna ask somebody for money, like what would that document, what would that 2-page document look like? And then if you were gonna give a speech, like what would that speech be? So those are kind of like your pitches, like your version of your business pitch.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? And feel free to raise your hand at any point. No. Yeah. A lot of us are going to college next year. And it's a lot of fun, but you know.
Yeah. Who's going to college? Everybody? A lot of people?
Oh,
yeah.
It's not next
Where are you guys going?
I don't know yet.
You don't know? You're still waiting to hear? Right, what month is it? Yeah, you're still waiting? People
There's
still waiting?
a sophomore, junior, seniors here,
cool.
so not everybody.
Okay.
What would be, was another lead-up question about starting a nonprofit or a business while in college, but what would be your biggest piece of advice when going through college and maybe looking at, you know, different kinds of majors and opportunities?
So one, sleep and have fun, because you clearly didn't do that in high school. And in all seriousness, my friend Rachel Simmons is writing a book about this, and there's a real like mental health crisis happening on college campuses with girls in particular. It's gotten very bad over the past couple of years because you feel like you're all this, I know you guys went through so much pressure to get into college or waiting to get into college, and then you get there and like, oh, it's gonna end. Well, no, it just continues, or you think it continues in your own head. And so I think really taking a step back and being able to enjoy and take a breath and be like, I got here. Like, I don't need to start the rat race again is really important. And I think the second thing, part of that too, is just try lots of different things. Like I think the thing is the way to figure out what your destiny is or what you really are on this earth to do is by process of elimination. So like all of us have 10 different careers or things that we think we want to do. Take your summers to try that. Oh, I think I want to teach. Okay, work for a professor. Oh, that's boring. I don't want to do that, right? Or, you know, I think I want to eat. You know, all those things that we have it in our head that we think we want to do, try it. And most of us, you'll know very quickly. That's what I would do. And I would be like, oh, I don't like this, or this isn't what I thought it would be, or I just, the vibe doesn't feel right. And then I was done. Like I had built it up in my head, tried it out, and it wasn't what I wanted to do, and I crossed it off.
Mm-hmm. So just to map out what you are passionate about. I mean,
well, I think again, I wouldn't say map out. I would say like make a list of the things you think you want to do, and then try all of them, and then cross them off.
Okay. And
or if you really know what you want to do, commit to it. So like, I wouldn't trade my life for the world, but I was one of those kids who, like, if you'd asked me what I wanted to do when I was 15, 16, 22, 25, it was the same. I wanted to run for office. And so if I were doing it, I would still do what I did. But if I were to tell you, I would have then just committed to that goal from the beginning and not got distracted with all the other things I thought I wanted to do, because I really didn't know what I wanted to do at an early age. So if you guys are passionate about one thing, or like start working on that now, because I do think that, like, whether it's a sport or it's a company or it's a it's running for office, it's like, I think if you put enough time into anything, you can accomplish anything. Like, every single person in this room can be president of the United States, like, if that's what you want to do. Seriously, if that's what you want to do, like, you can do it. But that does probably mean that you have to start thinking about what that path is as soon as you can. If it's like in your heart and that's what you really want to do.
What are your thoughts on business plan competitions, entrepreneurship competitions?
Great. Yeah.
Something to not to stay away from.
I think competition is good. I think, again, I'm a big fan of failure and rejection. So, like, I think you should, like, put yourself out there as much as you possibly can.
What would be kind of, because there's a lot of students who want to start something while at college, maybe don't know how to balance out academics, free time, and building a business. Did you have this kind of an experience of trying to do something like a business or running for office or interning in college? And like, how did you balance all that out?
Well, I mean, I think it's hard, right? I think that for me, at that time, I was very keen on being the number one person in my class. So I was very focused on like getting straight A's. And I graduated in college, basically first in my class. I got 1 B in chemistry, and I remember, so I had a 3.9999999, and I still, on like graduation day, went to that teacher and asked him to change it like crazy, right? And no one has to see my GPA. Like, you know what I'm saying? So like, that was what I had built up, right? And I tell people now, I think the problem is that I think you should really try to get C's. Like, I know this sounds crazy, but like, I missed out on taking so many classes that would have been such great fuel for my brain because I didn't think I was like, could be the best in them. And I missed out on a lot. You know, I was such in a rush in college. I wanted to graduate immediately, get straight A's, and like go to Harvard or whatever it was, right? And I just missed out a lot. I was always too much in a hurry. I was too much trying to get my accolades together and like move on. And I regret that. You know, so I think it's like, I think really take these moments because, you know, I'm 41 now and like, I don't get to go back to school, you know? And so like, you'll never get these moments back in your life. And you just get to like, think about how luxurious that is just to sit and learn and read and think and talk to people and hear speakers. Like, it's amazing. Like, it's really, really, really amazing. And really enjoy that time. Because I think things have changed. Listen, there are people who, like, people are banging down the door to work at Girls Who Code. And so I look at resumes all the time. I never look at where people went to school. Like, I look at, like, their experiences, like, where they worked, what they did in the summers, what, you know, like, what's unique or interesting about them. Like, I want to know about their hustle and, like, you know, whether they're excited by challenge. I don't care where they went to school or what their grade point average is.
Mm-hmm. We have a few questions for you.
For like many people, I guess like some haven't been like exposed to something. Like you said that you should try everything and like see what you do. So for someone that like hasn't experienced programming and like coding in general, do you take that into consideration, or is it just like a general, like, I guess, cultivation of experiences that you look at when
you want to pick
programs
for
you
girls?
said when
we
you
look
when you
for people who have no coding experience. Is that what you mean? Yeah.
like okay.
Yeah, because I think for us, we want to add new people to the pipeline, not people who are going to go there anyway.
I have a couple of like connected questions. So my first one is, what college did you go to? And then also, a lot of us are choosing majors right now for Brooklyn Tech. Like in sophomore year, we choose our major for the next 2 years. So I was wondering, like, did you change your major in college, and like how many times, and how was that process for you?
So I went to University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. So I went to a state school. I paid like $4,000 a year for tuition. It was amazing. Mm-hmm. And then I got my master's at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard, and I went to Yale for law school. But I applied to Yale 3 times before I got in. And I ended up doing my first year at Georgetown, and I transferred to Yale because I was so, like, I had decided I wanted to go to Yale from the time I was 13. But again, none of this is healthy, right? Like, nor behavior should be like replicated. And so, what was your second question?
For majors.
So again, I majored in poli-sci and, you know, in speech communications. And when I did my master's, on, essentially on South Africa. I was obsessed with Nelson Mandela. I had spent some time living in South Africa. And then in law school, you don't really major in anything in particular. But like the academic theme in my life was about, you know, political change and social change. And, you know, how do you do that? What, you know, how is that done? But I would, if I were to do it again, I would have majored in computer science. I would double majored in poli-sci and speech communications. So I would have connected those two together, because I think that like right now, I'm doing a lot of reading and thinking about this. It's like the job industry is changing so much. Mm-hmm. And like, you know, when I went to school, like my dad wasn't worried that I would graduate $300,000 in student loan and not get a job. You know, he was like, take out those public loans, take out those private loans. You're going to get a job at a law firm or, you know, a lawyer, and you're going to be fine. And he was right, but it's different now, you know? And so a lot of these industries are disappearing. Even in law, like so much of the work, the document review stuff is outsourced. And so you have to be, for those of us who, you know, need to pay the bills, right? You have to be thoughtful that you're actually learning something that is hireable, right? And I think you can do that by combining it with your passion. So I think all of you should major in computer science and the other thing you want to do, right? So you have a technical background, because those will be the last, the ones that tell the computers what to do, they'll be the last people who don't have a job.
And what were some things that you looked for in a college when you were picking?
Well, I wanted to go to University of Michigan, and my father said, no, I'm not paying for it. So I don't know if I had a choice. But for me, I would do it all over again. Like, I think Illinois had an amazing state school, you know, that was really incredible. And, you know, I think that, like, for me, graduating with so much student loan debt was hard because I didn't feel like I was free to make the choices that I wanted to make. I felt like I had to make financial decisions. And so sometimes I tell people now, like, go to a school that you can actually afford, right? But I don't know. I mean, that's a very personal decision, you know?
My dream is actually to become the President of the United States.
Great. I love it.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot, you know, so I relate to a lot of what you said.
Yep.
Thanks. Yeah, Michelle Obama.
It's a very cool shirt. Yep. She's awesome.
And yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot recently, so a lot of what you've been saying has been relating to me personally.
Yeah.
So what other advice would you give to someone like me?
Where do you live?
I live in Manhattan.
You live in Manhattan. Do you want to live in New York, you think so, or you're really young?
I don't know. I like Manhattan, and I like Boston, and I like DC.
Okay, so that was my problem too. But the first thing is you gotta pick a home, and you gotta pick a community, and you gotta like really get integrated in that community. And so that is, you know, if you really think that you wanna do this, I think you spend your summers working on campaigns and getting some of that experience, because you gotta know if you like it. Because campaigns and like being a politician, that's like a pace. It's like a way of life. And you gotta really figure out whether you're like down for that. And then you gotta pick a home. And then you just gotta get started. Like, there's no reason, how old are you?
I'm 16.
16. There's no reason why in your early 20s you can't run for office. That's like 4 years away. Like, you can do that.
Yeah, this is really crazy, but I've been planning exactly at what age I'll be able to run for president.
I love it. That's
so
great.
I was like 2036, here I come.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Now, don't get too crazy about it, right?
Yeah.
Because all these things are gonna happen and that you can't control. But I think you can like definitely, and you don't know if you gotta first win your first race to know whether you even like it. Because you may not. Like, you may not.
Mm-hmm.
It's a dirty business. And it's not for all of, I don't know if I sometimes feel like I'm too like real and authentic and not fake to like be in politics. So maybe we change it together, right? And you have like, you know, you have a bunch of people that are just changing the face of politics. But like if you're like it's in your core, like just get started on it. You know? Good.
And at any point, here we have a few minutes left, would you be able to ask and answer any questions about the individual initiatives of anybody?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so if you have any questions about a project that you're starting or a startup specific to your project, then feel free. So going back to Girls Who Code, do you plan, we had a lot of submitted questions on, do you plan to expand outside of the U.S.?
So, I mean, this is like the number one favorite question. I really want to solve the problem domestically first before we figure out whether we go international. Even though, like, international, the gender problem is just as bad. But I really, really, really feel like, for me, it's like so many of our girls' families live under the poverty line. And so I see, like, every day, like, you know, that in 7 weeks you can learn how to code and, like, take your entire family up into the middle class. Like that's why I get up to work every day, thinking about how can you use coding to close the poverty gap. And so there's a lot of people in our country that are suffering, you know, that need this skill set. And so I really want to figure out how to solve the problem here first. But we will go international eventually.
Mm-hmm. One country at a time.
One country at a time.
And what are some of your professional goals for the future? Do you plan to go back into politics full force?
Well, I think right now I'm really focused on getting to 1 million girls, you know, and so we have a bunch of book series coming out. We're pitching a couple different television shows. So like to me, it's like I think we're at this really pivotal moment to really disrupt and change culture. And I look at, so like if you go to NYU or Columbia or Barnard or CUNY, it's like, and you go into, the computer science classes, like they're 50% boys and 50% girls. Like we did that. Like that wasn't there 3 years ago. So like it's happening. And so I want to see this out. You know what I mean? And I think that, and I still, I go to work every day incredibly excited about this problem and about solving this problem. So I'm really focused on Girls Who Code and really doubling down like on our scale. My free time, I'm an activist. I was one of the organizers of the Women's March. We have a strike tomorrow. There's a lot of, like, I think that there's a lot of stuff my family and, my husband and I and my dog and my son, participate in to make sure that, we continue to have a voice. It's sad, being the daughter of refugees, right, and seeing what's happening with our immigration, policies is just really painful. And I want to make sure that, I continue to bring voice at the good work that refugees and immigrants do for this country. And so that's really my focus, right now.
And we're at our final questions here. We have a few minutes left.
If you could narrow it down to one person who made a significant impact on your life, who would it be?
Besides my family, or?
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton. I think that, like, I started watching her when I was 18, and then 20s, and then 30s and 40s, and the biggest impact she made on me was the fact that I learned resiliency, and I would watch her kind of get beat up and pick up, and even now. I remember I saw her the day after the election, and I was a mess, and she hugged me, and she's like, "You're gonna be okay." And like, she had just gone, you know what I mean, like woken up, gone through the most probably painful night of her life, and just to watch her in that purple suit stand up and give a speech, like, and then again go to the inauguration. I mean, that's just like, wow. Like, I don't care how you feel about her, like, you have to admire that in her. And I, watching her for 2 decades kind of do that at different moments in her life was just inspired me to do the same. So I think sometimes we need people that we can watch and follow and like get courage from. And all of us, you should all find who that person is, you know what I mean, in your life. And she was certainly that person for me in my life.
Any other questions? Okay, I have one more question.
Sure.
What I get a lot from my parents especially is that one thing that, for example, I need to work on is to detach myself at some points from, for example, Gifts of Awesome, because that's like day and night I'm thinking about. So how important do you think it is to step back and try to like not think about the organization?
I was just thinking about this recently. I don't know, it's hard. I don't know if I'm like, you're apparently mad at me. I don't know if I'm the best person to give you advice on this. Because I get obsessive about things. I think also that's when things work out. If you're just like, but I think there is something about not being attached to outcomes. And, I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, what's the difference between like perfection and excellence, right? So like trying your best at something because you're passionate about it, but you're not tied to the outcome. Mm-hmm. And the outcome isn't a reflection upon you, right? So like you're getting up and you're like really excited about Gifts of Awesome because it brings you joy and happiness, but like you're not upset if like X doesn't work out. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And I think that's like the difference, and I think that's training you. I also like, and I think I've been so bad about this in my life, and I think having a baby and then or a dog first and then a child like forced me to like have moments where I'm just kind of like living in the simplicity of life, and like, oh, what a beautiful sunset, or, you know what I mean, what a funny television show, or, turning on a song and like dancing by myself, you know, or now with my 2-year-old son, who's like a hip hop star. Seriously, it's like crazy. He's like, my way. I'm like, why are you asking me to play Calvin Harris? You're 2. Should be listening to me. Yes, that's another conversation. But yeah, you know, so I think that I think it's important to have moments where you're able to have like joy, and because that allows you to be creative and not obsessive. It's not good to be obsessive.
It's hard though.
It's hard, I know. I work on it.
Are you thinking about having another child?
I'm thinking of having another child. Yes, I am, because I would really like to have a girl. It's been amazing having a son, because I think you see the world in a different, my whole life is about girls and women, and girls and women, girls and women, and I see the world in a different way now that I have a son. But yeah, listen, I think that motherhood's amazing, and I think that being a parent's amazing, and I think you realize that it's all a freaking mess, and you're like, and tomorrow we have the strike, and my husband's out of town, and I of course gave my, the woman who helps with my child, my life, Audrey, the day off. But that means I'm stuck with him, and so, we gotta go to a protest at 12, and then do a Facebook Live at 2, and I gotta speak at a panel, and like, I know I'm gonna be a hot mess, and like, probably have crap all over me by the end of the day, but that's it, it's messy, you know what I mean? And I think when you try to make it seem like it's so easy is when it becomes stressful.
Does your husband also work in computers and coding?
So he's an entrepreneur. He started his first business probably when he was 18. A serial entrepreneur, now is in venture capital. But yeah, he's incredible and like super smart and just super fun, and is an amazing dad. Probably does 55% of the work at home, which is really helpful. And I think all of us should think about that. As you're thinking about your life, like who's the person that you're choosing to spend your life with? Because oftentimes that decision will be the greatest impact, right? On whether you're able to achieve your professional dreams.
How did you meet him?
Like personal.
Process of elimination. I met him through like the Salvation Mafia, as we call it. He was not at all the person was like my type. But he, asked me to marry him 3 times before I finally said yes.
Wow.
So, where we down. The best decision I made. He believes in me more than I believe in myself. And I think it's really important to have. And he's not, intimidated or any of it. Like, if anything, he's just always like, if I'm off my goals, he's like, wait, what's going on? And it's really important. I'm very lucky. Yep.
So I went to the Women's March on Washington,
Yes.
and I've done a bunch of stuff this past year. But what if we can't do the strike tomorrow?
We're red.
Okay. Yeah. Like, what else? Because I go to an all-girls school, so it's kind of like going against the point if I'm not going to school tomorrow,
Well, I think part of the point is to like, I'm not telling you not to go to school, so let's clear on the record. I think the point is for people to feel the absence of women, and like, what does that look like? So like, I was like, of course, summoned to be on a jury, and I'm not going. Of course, I told them I'm not going, but and so, what does it look like when a jury doesn't have any women? Or what does it look like, right, when your workplace doesn't have all women? I obviously gave, everyone Girls Who Code a PTO, but I think it's important to just that symbolic effect, and then to use your voice online tomorrow. Mm-hmm. You can do that by wearing red and being at school.
Okay. Any more questions?
How do you teach? Well, I know it's not you personally, but how do you teach the people at Girls Who Code how to code?
So we have a curriculum that has been designed by our amazing education team, and it's a lot of like project-based learning. So it's like week 1 is algorithms, or week 2 is robotics, or like how to build a mobile app, and then we like basically infuse a lot of this kind of sisterhood, confidence building, right, public speaking, like the other things that Girls Who Code Plus, right, that make you a girl who codes. and we iterate upon it, because like right now, like AR and VR are super hot, everybody's talking about it, and so a lot of these languages are changing every year, every month, and so, but the foundation of like understanding how to computationally think is at the core of what it, you know, of what we teach, and what we feel like is the best like pedagogy for teaching computer science. So it's not about regurgitating a language, it's about learning how to computationally think and solve problems.
You said that you led your first protest at 13.
Yeah.
How were you able to do that? Because I also want to start a protest for students.
Yeah.
So how were you able to do that?
Well, I mean, I wanted, so for me, I was, you know, raised in like, I was in a Midwest town, there was a lot of discrimination happening, and so I started an organization in my high school called Prejudice Reduction Interested Students Movement. Yes, PRISM. I got better in my marketing skills during my life. And we just organized a group, you know, to march through the town. So you can just do it.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, like maybe there's an issue at your Brooklyn Tech and you just organize a walkout. Sorry, I probably shouldn't say that around. You know,
I like that
like,
idea.
I wouldn't, don't overthink it. Like, don't overthink it. Like, there's not a playbook for a lot of these things. Like, when we think about the Women's March, honestly, it was like 25 of us, who some of us were friends, some of us weren't. And we're just like, we gotta do something. And we just came together, 10 weeks. And, yeah, I just think sometimes we think these things are so hard, and really you just have to do it. And we weren't attached to outcomes. If 100,000 people came to Washington, great. If, you know, 2 million people came, even better. But we weren't attached to outcomes. Maybe this goes back to your point, you know, which I think is important.
Okay.
Great. Thanks,
Yeah.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Do you want to take a photo? You can do a photo.
Yeah.
Let's do a photo. Yeah, let's do it.
So I
I'll
think
finish
that
this.
it'd be great if